Good morning. This is Bill from Curious Cars and Auto House of Naples on well, you know, it's not bad this morning. The temperature's in the low 60s, which is fine, but it doesn't bode well. Yesterday's temperature was in the high 40s at the beginning, the low 50s, and I knew it was going to be a decent day. Today, with the temperatures where they're at, I think we're going to creep into the 80s. We've got a little bit of unseasonably warm weather creeping back, and that is just not the kind of crap that I'm going to be interested in at all. Again, I just prefer a nice chilly winter while we have it, before the crappy, horrible weather of summer comes back to make everybody miserable. But looks like we've got about a week of kind of forecasting nasty weather, so you know it's not going to bode well for my chipperness. But anyway, look, we're going to get into it. After yesterday's Cavalier video, which frankly I haven't even put up yet, so hopefully I get that up today, and then this car will be up tomorrow. We got a one-day lag time. I thought I needed something with a little bit more horsepower, so we are back in Penelope's shop. Although this car will be consigned with Auto House. And frankly, this is going to be a very quick take video. I promise. This time I absolutely mean it. This time it's not going to be the, you know, oh my God, this is going to be a short, and then it's 125 minutes. This one is actually going to be short. For one reason, I did a history of hot rodding already. That was done, I think we had a 33 Ford that I did that. Maybe it was a 34. I don't remember now, but I'm going to link to it in the description of this. So if you have any kind of an interest in how these cars, hot rods, street rods, that sort of thing came to be, then that video will answer the question. So this one is only going to be just very quickly about this car. And the reason for that is it's probably going to end up on some of the auction sites. I don't know if I may take it to a Barrett-Jackson or something. We may run it on Bring a Trailer. I'm not sure yet. But either way, I just needed to have a video to back it up. And it's in the meantime, it'll probably be for sale up on Auto House of Naples. More than anything, if I'm going to be completely honest, I wanted to share this thing because I thought it was absolutely badass. It's very rare that a car gets me, you know, kind of super excited anymore, but this one kind of did, and obviously for good reason, as we'll get into what we're going. So look, basically hot rodding is kept alive by guys who keep it alive, who make these projects, who build these cars. And the gentleman who built this car, well, he's very well-to-do. I mean, like, owned an airline kind of well-to-do. I mean, a very, very, very rich guy beyond what, you know, most people would. He's a very rich guy. Long story short, this is not the kind of thing that matters to me at all. I really don't care about that. I mean, look, I take people as they are. You know, I have no friggin' money. Some guys have a ton of money. It doesn't really matter to me. But in this case, it matters to the story of the car and how it came to be and why it's important. So this guy, he absolutely obsesses over a project. You know, hot rodding is in his blood like a virus. I mean, it's just something that he has to do, to the point that he just absolutely goes insane. He maintains a large private shop locally. He has another one up north, by the way, for his projects and collections and stuff he's putting together. He maintains a very skilled and expensive staff. In fact, the guy on staff here in Naples, he drives a Ferrari 5 Berlinetta Boxer. I mean, you're talking about a guy who doesn't mind paying for people who know what they're doing. So he has this private mechanic to maintain his stuff and build his cars, and they go to the absolute limit. So what happens with this guy is he buys something, he obsesses over it, he spends an absolute fortune on it, he drives it for a very short while, and then sells it for less than half of what he has in it. Apparently that's just basically his MO. So long story short, he's a pretty cool cat. His builds are absolutely insane and use the best of everything while still being true to the classic hot rodding that's running through his blood. So budgets are just not a consideration, and I think you're going to see that as we get into this car. This one he built, he hung on to and drove more than most of the stuff that he ends up with. In fact, he put more than 5,000 miles on this thing, which to me is completely insane. I mean, I don't necessarily want to drive this thing to 7-Eleven. It basically terrifies me. And here this guy is running it around town to the tune of 5,000 miles. It's actually pretty damn impressive. It began life as a real 1934 Chevy 3-window coupe. It's got the original steel body. It's got the original frame, although it's been completely remanufactured and reinforced to withstand a rather massive amount of horsepower, as you'll see as we get into this car. And it's just absolutely gorgeous to look at. Let me do a quick walk around of this thing. I mean, oh God, okay, real quick story of the car. I got it on consignment from a guy who bought it from the guy who built it. And I took it back to auto. I said, man, this thing is through the roof. Tell me the story of this car. Well, the guy who bought it didn't know a bunch about its history, so I ended up calling the guy who built it. He put me in touch with the guy who he hired to build it. Oh my God, I'm tripping over crap in Penelope's garage. Anyway, he went through the story and he said, man, this guy, we'll call him Tim. It's not his name, but that's what we'll call him. He just throws money at things. He just absolutely, if there's something better than the last better thing, then he's going to buy it. And that's what he did with this car. So I had to sort of re-engineer where it came from, what it had in it, and how it came to be. And it's just absolutely insane. So anyway, what they did was they started with a car that he bought, which was in nice shape, and he drove it to his shop up in Michigan and said, okay, rip that small block Chevy out of there and let's put in something more interesting. So they did. They put in a what's called a C5-R racing block. Now that is from Chevrolet. It's an aluminum LS7 block, a 427. That stuff that's beyond what's in the most modern Z06s from 19 and 20. An absolutely incredible way to start. And then he started building it from there. So it's just absolutely crazy. You can see the look of the car. It's finished in fire engine red. It has mostly interesting that he didn't chop it. And I think, again, that goes back to the age of the guy who built it. He is a real classic hot rodder. And it's just done up in a style that is more vintage than modern. I mean, you see one of these things today, it's chopped, it's got 4-inch windows, it's got 22-inch wheels, it's a whole different ball of wax. But this guy came from an old school, and this car was done in that style. So I tell you what, I'm going to pause for a minute and get my crap together, and then we're going to dive into this car. So hold on for a second. All right, we're back. So look, I'm going to approach this car a little bit differently. Usually we kind of start with the well, actually, it's not that different. We're going to start with the outside. We're going to get into the mechanic. We're going to get into the trunk and the interior. Then we'll get into the mechanicals, which are truly the most interesting part. And then we'll take the damn thing on a ride. So first off, the car was sent to a shop in Daytona where a guy has spent his entire career learning how to charge people an incredible amount of money for paint and body work. And he did figure that out perfectly. So we charged Tim, the guy who built this car, over $100,000, if it's to be believed, to do the paint and body work on this car. That does not count the mechanical stuff that was done to the guy. I mean, this thing, according to the guy who built it, more than $200,000 was spent putting this thing together, and now it can be owned for less than half of that. So it's absolutely incredible. But I have to say that the paint quality on the car and this fire engine red is absolutely concours. It's using an original original grille, as one would expect. You see it even has the little opening there at the bottom to crank start it with a handle. That's not going to happen on this engine, but we'll get into that as we go. The headlights are original. The fenders, absolutely gorgeous, swooping. I've learned an appreciation for these era of car. Maybe it even started back with that ZZ Top Eliminator when I was a kid, which this car, of course, reminds me of. And as I understand hot rodding more, it was a generation or two before me. I've really come to appreciate what it is, how it happened, and where it's led to, and why it's so important to what we're doing today. It has these American Racing torque thrust looking rims on it. It's got a geometric brake kit behind it. You see on the running boards a nice place for Bonnie and Clyde to step up and start shooting FBI guys, which actually that's prescient to what we're talking about today. I love the vents in the side of the fenders. Very, very cool. These can be opened and closed by hand. Neat stuff. You get around, it has the original taillights on it, which are just beautiful. These lovely chrome bumpers. You got a couple of twice pipes in the back, which spit out fire when this thing's under acceleration. And let's just start inside the trunk. So a big part of hot rod building is, of course, what's underneath it. And the real guys drive them to be driven. And that's what Tim did with this car. So you can see it's a beautifully finished trunk. He's got a Alpine amp there that's the size of the Queen Mary. And if we pull down this little panel here, you'll see the wiring that went into this car with the custom fuse box and that sort of thing, and the Optima battery. You also have a couple of rather enormous woofer. I mean, there's just no area that he didn't upgrade in this thing to be pretty cool. But anyway, all the wiring in this car is done to marine standards with solder joints and marine hardware, and it's the kind of stuff that absolutely makes it drivable. It's not just a garage queen, something to trailer around. By using these high standards of build quality, you can actually drive this thing. It's got a billet hood prop. It's just so first class everywhere you look. All the stainless hardware, all the chrome. It's just done to absolute incredible standards, and you could certainly tell that money just wasn't an object in this build. Even the way the center brake light is built into the hood or the roof of the car, it's not in your face. It's just a lovely, subtle touch. That's really cool to see. The chrome, the bright work, very, very neat stuff. All original hardware done properly. Mirrors, the little driving lights here, the antenna. It's got the electric wipers, which these cars originally did. And here's a BDS fuel injection hat coming out the hood, concealing what's underneath, which we'll get into in a minute. I do even love the Body by Fisher tag going on the bottom of the cowling there. Very, very cool stuff. And I do appreciate that this is a Chevrolet. A lot of these old hot rods you see are 33 Fords. They're kind of the preferred body, if you will. But this guy is a Chevy fanatic, and probably wouldn't allow you to park a Mustang in his parking lot. So very, very interesting stuff. Let's have a look at the interior real quick before we go on a drive. Then I'm going to get into the engine. So the interior is fully custom, all been done by a very high-end trim shop. Looks like it has seats from a C4 Corvette that have been very nicely integrated into it. They're leather and cloth. All the power accessories are still there. In fact, I tell you what I'm going to do. We're going to get into the engine, and it's too dark in here to do the interior now. I'm going to wait till we pull it out, and we'll get a little bit more up close with that. So let's have a look at the engine. To do that, it's got a hood that you can remove. You have to pull out this little guy here, and that's going to let me lift up this side of the hood. It hinges on both sides, and get the prop rod out, and we'll put it into place. And I have to appreciate that this is one of the easiest hoods that I've had to open in a while. So all right, let's very quickly get into the mechanical aspect of this car because it's incredibly impressive. Obviously, the first thing that you see is that rather enormous BDS 871 blower. That is a very large blower to have on a very light car, and well beyond what most of these things need. But so this guy went out and he bought this, what do they call it, a C5-R racing block from Chevrolet. It's like a $10,000 block. It sends it off to a guy in Michigan, an engine builder, who puts it all together. 9 to 1 compression, lower compression because it's going to be supercharged. Sends an order to a guy named Mike Moran of Moran Motorsports, who's apparently quite a hip cat in the hot rodding world. He ports and polishes a couple of MS7 heads for it. He CNC machines a custom intake for it, and it just becomes absolutely insane. So it's got, look, I've got to run through the list like those guys you hear at the car show, and I'm going to do that mostly because this is for an auction website and people kind of need to know this stuff. So forgive me the little technical list of stuff here. But so anyway, look, okay, you've got the C5-R block, you've got the MS7 heads ported and polished, you've got the 871 blower, you've got Big Stuff 3 fuel injection with 16 injectors, so probably should get 40-50 miles to the gallon on this thing. You've got this BDS bug catcher hat, they call it, with set up for modern fuel injection. You've got Big Stuff, I already said that, the fuel injection. I mean, just look at the work that has gone into this thing. You see the billet pulleys down there, the big blower belt, the chrome power steering, polished aluminum power steering. It's just every detail has been absolutely set up to make this thing bad to the bone. Even the hood with the dual side hinges, which is removable. Fenders are removable, so you can go down the road with all of that off. Love the little chrome section behind the firewall to highlight everything. And again, it's just bad to the bone. Behind the engine, you're going to find a built 4L65E transmission. That's a 4-speed GM automatic overdrive, and the 65 instead of the 60 has a little bit more oomph to handle the horsepower this thing has. And from what I understand it, because Tim wanted to drive it for 5,000 miles, they actually detuned this motor by using smaller pulleys and the electronic tuning to get it, to around 700 or so. So it's absolutely, it's like something your mom drives to church. The front end is there's a company called Fat Man. I have some friends who could fit that, myself included. But they make a Pinto-style front suspension with very modern geometry, and that's what this has. Again, the frame is a 34 Ford, but it's been remanufactured and reinforced. You get into the back, you've got triangulated 4-link suspension. And I'm going to try to get some photos of the underneath so I can put this up while I'm talking about it. The 4-link suspension with Ford 9-inch rear end and QA1 coilovers. We talked about the GM metric brake kit. Every bit of line in it, so all the fuel lines, all the brake lines, all the exhaust, everything is stainless steel. Under the hood, you got vintage air, so you got some AC, and of course, we talked about the wiring being ultramarine standard. So the thing is just absolutely set up to be a driver on top of a showstopper, and that's where the money comes. I mean, anyone could put together a car that looks pretty cool and is amazing to have at a show, but to make one that you can put 5,000 miles on while still having everything that wows everybody, that's where absolute unlimited funds come in. So real quick, here's what I can't help myself. While we're doing this car, even though it's going to be quick, I decided that I was going to do a very, very short rundown of the events of 1934, when this car in its original form was driving around the world, because 34 was kind of an interesting year. You had America emerging from the Great Depression that was starting. I think the unemployment rate was down to 22%, which was a big improvement from where it had been. John Dillinger, public enemy #1, died after a shootout with some FBI guys. They finally tracked him down. Bonnie and Clyde also shot to death by more FBI guys. So this was a good year for the FBI and a bad year for, bank robbers. But anyway, they got shot up. The Loch Ness Monster was spotted for the first time. It became a thing. You remember that famous photograph taken by that doctor, and throw a picture of that up. But anyway, that's when the Loch Ness Monster thing came to light. You remember the Lindbergh baby, the kidnapping? That happened a couple years before this, but a guy named Bruno Hauptmann, a very German-sounding guy, was arrested and charged with the kidnapping and murder. Alcatraz opened for business as a federal penitentiary. Donald Duck was introduced, and Adolf Hitler declared himself the Fuhrer. So, pretty big year, 1934, in terms of world events. And some interesting people were born in 34 as well. You have Sophia Loren. You have Yuri Gagarin, you have Hank Aaron, Giorgio Armani, Brigitte Bardot, Ralph Nader, and of course Charles Manson. We don't want to forget him. So anyway, there is the briefest of rundowns of 1934, and now I would say it's time to drive the car. So let me pause for a minute, and we're going to get right into it. All right, enough talk. Let's drive the damn thing. You get it. You get the Corvette seats. You get the work that's been done. You get the headliner, the steering wheel, the gauges, the wood, the dash, all of the accessories. All first rate, all very fancy. Love the moon tack as well. Again, a nod to classic hot rodding. So here we go. Yeah, I mean, that really does. Oh, boy. Yeah, that's kind of the right song for this. All right, let's do it. Man, could I mess up Penelope's driveway. I honestly feel like I'm staging for some kind of NHRA event. All right, here's a quick drive-by. There is the sad state of affairs with the Spec Miata. That's the one that Chris ran into and tried to kill me. So somehow we're going to remain friends. And somehow I'm trying not to kill myself in a 3,000-pound car with 700 horsepower. I think it has seat belts, but I'm not sure. It does have power steering, which is nice. And the way this thing is set up, it's uber straight. It's got a tremendous amount of drivability. There's suspension travel. It just feels nice to drive, but it is absolutely insane under the hood. Anybody could have gone out and bought like an LSA or something and just bolted it in. But this nut job has to put in a blown LS motor, a 427 motor, because why not? And I have to say that I do kind of agree with him. Let's hope there's no policemen around. Man, is this thing radical. Holy shit. It's like a throttle. Yeah, I could have a lot of fun with this. And you really could. I mean, you take it to a car show, you always see the hot rod guys, but generally speaking, you see some kind of a small block Chevy with a tunnel ram. The guy who takes this to the car show is going to have probably the engine that people are talking about. Oh, boy. It's a good way to wake up in the morning. The steering, I gotta say, it's pretty damn impressive. See all the gauges. Oh man, this thing's cool. I mean, that was absolutely nothing. I barely hit half throttle. Last night I drove it. I hit it probably not even close to 3/4, but over a half, and the whole thing kicked sideways. Yeah, all right. Look, anyway, I just look like a giant goofball. This is a 1934 custom street rod. We went through all the stats that it has in the video, so I'm not going to reiterate them. But let's just, you know, sum it up by saying this thing is absolutely insane, bad to the bone, and if somebody wants, you know, the most radical 34 at the car show, well, this is probably going to be it. So look, it'll be up on Auto House, you know, otherwise it's going to head to Barrett-Jackson or one of these places, and, you know, we'll see how it does. So thank you for having a look today. Really appreciate it. We'll see you with the next one. Take care.